Shivas Nefesh, Restoring of the Soul, Revival of the Soul, Restoring of the Soul, part 3, part, first lesson, 1. One searching and seeking into one finds in oneself some good points with which to uplift and strengthens strengthen oneself in God's service, draws down all the rectifications made by the priests performing their service, the Levites standing on the platform, and the Jewish people in their positions, besides all the rectifications affected by the sacrifices and the incense offering to the light of the infinite shines even at the very lowest levels, only that it is very hidden and covered by many garments. Anyone though who wants to attach himself to God can do so in any place about which the verse says, happy is he who does not forget you. I am the man, and the man who takes strength in you. Great effort and encouragement is needed for this, and the lower the level, the more one must strengthen oneself. For even in the darkness of hell, one can draw the light of the infinite upon oneself by closing one's eyes and totally surrendering oneself to God. This is by closing one's eyes and totally surrendering oneself to God. This is alluded to in verses. Though I walk through the valley of death, I will not fear, for you are with me. And though I sit in darkness, God is a light to me. Part 3, it is important for everyone to know that whenever some spark of godliness begins to shine within, or if one is aroused with some new inspiration for God, the forces of evil will rise. The forces of evil rise against one that much more. One must be very firm not to fall or be discouraged by this. Even if it happens thousands of times, one must simply strengthen oneself with the Torah, endeavoring to draw down new true Torah insights. Even one who does not merit this should at least strengthen himself, and endeavoring to draw down new true Torah insights. Even one who does not merit this should at least strengthen himself to study the Torah with new enthusiasm and fulfill it with simplicity and innocence, not veering from its ways, though one's enthusiasm may cause one to yearn to be holy and to completely abstain from the mundanities of this world, as indeed would be fitting it. Nevertheless, one's evil inclination is overwhelmingly challenging. Precisely now, more than ever, one must not give up completely because of this. Rather, one must strengthen oneself to at least remain within the basic path of the Torah and to fulfill the verse. Do not be overly righteous and do not be overly wicked, meaning that one should not become overly wicked for having been unsuccessful in trying to be overly righteous. When one follows this path firmly, one will proceed securely and be able to rouse oneself to God at all times, closing one's eyes to this world and surrendering oneself to God. If one merits truly surrendering oneself, entirely detaching oneself. If one merits truly surrendering oneself, entirely detaching oneself from this world as is the ideal good. But if not, one should at least not be discouraged by this and rather strengthen oneself to be an upright person with complete simplicity, following the ways of the Holy Torah. For the Torah breaks and negates all the evil forces that want to overcome this. Part 4. One who wants to draw close to God must always seek Him wherever one finds oneself, finding and elevating that place to the aspect of beyond place that is to God, who is the place of the world. One then merits truly serving God, and there is no place in which one will be unable to do this. Even if one's sins have brought one down to some bad place, even to a very lowly, gross and filthy place, one nevertheless must remember that God is the place of the world. One nevertheless must remember that God is the place of the world, and He contains within Himself a place forever for each and every individual. Therefore it is absolutely impossible to fall away from God, since from wherever one is, one can return to God, as in you will seek out God from that place, from wherever one is. In the name of the Baal Shem Tov. From that place, from wherever one is. Human 5. All human deeds are done within time and space, which is where the forces of evil have their main hold. But God is above time and space, where everything is good and the forces of evil have no hold there. Everything is sweet as in, if I ascend to heaven, there you are. They are fashioned over the course of many days, but to Him they are one that is. There is no time or space to which one may escape, or in which one should despair of finding God. All places in the world are within him, and he gives life to all the places and spiritual levels, and the same with time. Therefore one can find God at all times and in all places, for space and time themselves are all from God. Therefore through repentance one can draw near to God and rise above space and time. 6, the main way to deal with all the confusions, lusts, and wanton and foreign thoughts that hound a person and confuse them, especially during prayer, causing one great suffering, and is patience. Is patience, which is an aspect of faith. God is one, must have complete faith in God and in the true tzaddikim and upright ones. ממון, strengthening oneself in his holy service and never becoming discouraged, concerned, or troubled by any confusion or uncertainty that the forces of evil want to create in one's mind, as if all hope were lost. One must pay no heed to this at all, but rather strengthen oneself grateful. Rather strengthen oneself greatly, for this is absolutely no cause for despair. Whatever one's condition, even if one has experienced a particular doubtful countless times, there is still absolutely no cause for despair, and one must strengthen oneself and start anew again and again, and never fall into the senility. Senility. Never fall into the senility. Never fall into the senility of the forces of evil. All spiritual falls are an aspect of the senility of the forces of evil, when it seems to a person that one has already become entrenched in one's sins and deeds to the point that it seems impossible any longer to free oneself from them. But the truth is that one must know and believe that every single day and at every time and moment one has the power to renew oneself and become a truly new creation. God makes new creations every day, and no hour is identical to another. Therefore one must strengthen oneself and always begin anew, sometimes beginning anew several times a day, no matter for how long this will go on. No matter how bleak one's situation, one must remind oneself of God at every moment and hour, completely forgetting whatever happened beforehand and truly starting anew from this point to whatever extent one is able, and not being concerned at all about any confusion or uncertainty. All this is an aspect of patience. Patience to endure all the confusions and obstacles, and to not pay heed to anything or be discouraged by whatever one is enduring. Rather one must strengthen oneself in God as much as one can, for God is full of mercy at all times. His kindness is endless and his mercies are without bounds. Senility. Zikmil. 7. The only reason most people are distant from God is because of setbacks and despair. Most have tried several times to begin serving God, only to then fall back into their old ways, each one to his own. Some of them were inspired to begin again, perhaps several times, but when they saw that they always fell back, they gave up on themselves. However, this is all the work of the evil inclination, which is called old and foolish, and which wants to throw a person into senility and weakness, as if one is too entrenched in one's sins and deeds to the point of being unable to change. But the truth is that one is a new creation every day, as we recite in the morning blessings. So one must strengthen oneself at all times and look upon oneself as if one were born this very day and is receiving the Torah today. Anu 8. God and his Torah are endless and limitless, and just as spiritual advancement is meaningless before God's greatness, for there is always higher, so is spiritual backslide meaningless. Thus, no matter how low one has fallen, there is always a lower state, and since there is a lower state, one must strengthen oneself not to fall any further. The main source of strength comes through the power of the great tzaddikim, who never remained at one level but constantly rose higher, even when they reached the highest levels, even a very awesome and sublime level. They were never complacent with themselves, but said, since God is infinite, who knows what more one can reach in this world. So they always began anew until they indeed reached ever higher levels. So there is hope for all the fallen ones through the power of the tzaddikim, and there is absolutely no cause for despair. Though one may feel that it is impossible to rise from such backside, who knows God's kindness God possesses such kindness that one can't ascend, even from those places, and not even a single cry that one cries out, even from the lowest depths of hell, is ever lost, regardless of what happens afterwards. May human understand that since one can never really come higher in respect to God, so can one never really go lower, to the point of not being able to return. Indeed, all is one for the more that the tzaddik human rise to a higher level and attains greater perception of God's greatness. So such a seaboard of God's kindness, which is God's main greatness. For the trait of kindness is called greatness. Therefore those tzaddikim who merit reaching even ever higher perception of God's greatness, which is the greatness of His kindness, they're perceiving that there is actually no such thing as falling, and there's absolutely no cause for despair. They continually reach higher perceptions. They continually reach higher perceptions of such kindnesses that are the essence of God's greatness, opening the way for everyone to return. Therefore, even those on a very low spiritual level, or even those who have fallen into complete wickedness, as long as one is still alive and can still move a single limb, one must have patience and always hope for salvation, always endeavoring to begin anew as best as one can. And no matter what the circumstances, no movement of holiness or any side cry or yearning, no movement of holiness or any side cry or yearning for holiness is ever lost, for God will not abandon forever, and His mercies and kindnesses are endless. A backslide or a regression is sometimes for the purpose of advancing. The main purpose of a backslide is in order to strengthen oneself and begin anew, renewing one's vitality and mind. This is the main work, constantly living a new life in one's service of God, in one's service of God. 10. A common mistake that most people make about themselves is the belief that the essence of their soul is not holy, and that this is why it is difficult for them to return to God and be a truly righteous or upright person like the other sneaking and upright people. Human customarily in response to a conversation about some tzaddik or God-fearing person, after initial inspiration of thoughts to repent and come close to God. For every Jew is always filled with thoughts of repentance and desires to come close to God. They immediately say, who can compare to that tzaddik? His soul was holy from birth. They assume the righteousness of the tzaddikim and the upright is only a result of the holy soul they were born with. But this is not so. The main righteousness of a tzaddik is only from his toil and effort in serving God for years, repeatedly strengthening himself and not allowing himself to fall under any circumstances. Praying and supplicating profusely until he attains what he does. But anyone can be like this, for everyone has free will. As the sage said, the crown of a good name is offered to all, and the truth of the matter is that the mistaken belief that their souls are not holy and can therefore not match the deeds of the tzaddikim is a consequence of the chambers of exchange, which cause the exchange of the sons of the king and the servant. Spinamasius number 11, on account of which the king's son fell so steeply into evil ways until he began to doubt whether he was the king's son or the servant. Similarly with every person who is far from God, especially as this bitter exile intensifies as it comes to an end. The forces of evil rise up so forcefully that many people despair entirely, as if their souls are not fit at all to serve God. All this is only deception of the evil inclination. The truth is so that a person must know and believe that every Jewish soul is exalted and precious, each one a prince, human, and all are able to reach very high and holy levels, just like all the sneaking and upright ones. They too endure evil thoughts and weakening of resolve like these. However, they had the insight not to let this belief mislead them, and they strengthened themselves with great determination until they merited what they did. Fortunate are they. This is an aspect of he took pride in God's ways. He took pride in God's ways. The main idea of the blessing recited before Torah study is that each person must thank God for having chosen us from all the peoples and gave us His Torah, which is an aspect of a segula that is beyond our understanding. It is impossible to understand why God chose us over all the others, as the angel of Egypt indeed argued. The Egyptians are idol worshippers, and so are the Israelites. Thus, for good reason, the Jewish people are referred to as segula for their nearness to their Father in heaven. More than that of the rest of the world is only a matter of segula, something beyond human understanding that is impossible to comprehend. This is the secret of the holy point that comprises all points of the Jewish people, which is an aspect of the point of Moses, Moshe, which is numerically 345, which is embodied with every Jewish point that stands between Shema annihilation, numerically 344, and Ratzon, desire, numerically 346, and which is the essential difference between the Jewish people and the non-Jewish nations, throughout which we merit rising from the evil of the 17 nations, an aspect of annihilation, and entering the holiness of Israel, an aspect of desire. Therefore each Jew, no matter how far he has fallen, even if his great sins have nearly brought him to being unable to distinguish between the holiness of the Jewish people and the purity of the Gentiles, is still obliged to strengthen himself in the point of his Jewishness, inherent from birth, from being born Jewish, even though he can barely feel the holiness of Jewishness within him due to his great sins. Nevertheless, one must believe that this collective holy point, that is the aspect of the point of Moses embodied within every Jew, is a great secret that is impossible to comprehend. Therefore, on the contrary, one who has fallen so far certainly needs to thank and bless for his lot of being among the seed of Israel and not born a non-Jew, but containing within oneself this holy point that is the essential difference between the holiness of the Jewish people and the other nations. Through this point, every Jew can literally rise out of annihilation and enter desire, but at the very least, one must never despair to the extent of thinking we will be like the Gentiles, which is an aspect of the mistake of them reciting the blessing before Torah study, due to once having fallen deeply. When one becomes aware of the great spiritual damage one is causing, it becomes hard for one to recite the blessing before Torah study, since one is anyway not fulfilling it. But this is precisely what caused the destruction of the temple and the exile. As the sages said, regardless of circumstances, one must never despair, but must all the more express the blessing for one's lost in possessing a holy point of Jewishness, which is the essence of the blessing for Torah study, and search for the good points of Jewish holiness that are still within one, strengthening oneself with them until one can truly rise from annihilation into desire. However, meriting all this comes primarily through drawing near to tzaddikim, who are an aspect of Moses and who arouse and illuminate this holy point within us, through which they sweeten all judgments and rise us from annihilation to desire. 12. The main point of the mitzvah of reciting the Shema, which is the declaration of faith that everything happens only according to the divine will. It should draw this holy faith upon oneself every day anew, as in every day the mitzvahs should be as new in your eyes. One must draw upon oneself the will of holiness and bind all one's thoughts, heart and mind to this will, so that all one's longing, yearning and desire should always be firmly focused on the true eternal purpose, increasing one's holy desire every day anew, constantly strengthening it more and more. Regardless of, one must endure, one must not allow one's desire to ever weaken. The main thing is that one believes that completely new things are created every day. One must also wait until the day of one's salvation, for God seeds new salvations every single day. With every new day, more and new holiness comes from above, and the only reason why God sustains the world and renews it with His kindness is in order to arouse us to renew ourselves every day with new and strong desires for Him. This is why the purification of defiled people is dependent on days. Some only require the setting of the sun, their purification and salvation. Their purification and salvation being dependent only on the arrival of the next day, while others require 7 days for the purification when the Jewish people left Egypt. They counted 7 complete weeks until they merited receiving the Torah. The main thing is to strengthen oneself, even though one has not yet attained complete purification, which is an aspect of receiving the Torah. Nevertheless, one must strengthen oneself every day with new strong desires and be constrained and extremely firm. Extremely firm. Extremely firm. Strong desires and be extremely firm, and this throughout everything one is enduring, until one merits the day of one's complete salvation and purification. Some will only merit complete purification after sunset. That is, after passing from this world, an aspect of after the sun has set, he shall be purified, and then he may eat from the holies, which is one's portion in the future life, which one merits immediately after sunset. Such a person will not need to be reincarnated and suffer the lot of one who has not prepared himself at all during his lifetime by struggling to increase one's holy desires every day. Then on one's final day, all the good that one had amassed in this world is gathered together with every good desire he had on each day of his life. This alone is his hope and eternal inheritance. Nanach nachmo, nachman meyuman. Lesson 13. Nanach nachmo, nachman meyuman. Followers of the truth tzaddik. Nanach nachmo, nachman meyuman, who is an aspect of the elder of holiness, are careful never to fall into old age, no matter whatever they are enduring on any day. They have faith that each and every day is a brand new reality. God renews creation every single day, and there is no day that does not have some good, although there is a veil surrounding it. Those followers believe that God's great kindness is limitless, thus drawing new kindnesses down to the world every day, thus increasing the light of holiness and wisdom every day, through which the revelation of divine goodwill shines more intensely every day. 14. The only way anyone who wants to have mercy on oneself and reflect upon one's ultimate purpose is to consider oneself a completely new creation every single day, no matter what one's situation. No matter what one's situation, the truth is that one is indeed created anew every day, which is why we say the morning blessings each day, as is explained in the Shulchan Aruch. Therefore, no matter what the circumstance, one's daily holy service must be completely new each time. Every Jew performs several mitzvahs every day, donning tzitzis and tefillin and the like, but the most important thing is to integrate the idea that every single day that this day has never been before and will never be again. The service of God needed on this particular day is hence entirely new, and specifically you have been given the obligation to carry out this particular service of this particular person, to carry out this particular service of this particular person in this particular generation on this specific day. No angel nor even the souls of the tzaddikim, in the supernal Garden of Eden can complete the service. Only a living person can thank you as I do today, that is just as I am today, on whatever lowly level. Since I am alive, I must thank you. Furthermore, the more one knows deeply how low and corrupted one is, the more God's great name is magnified and sanctified when one draws close to Him, as in when Jethro came, His holy name was exalted and honored. God's main greatness is specifically when distant ones draw close to Him. The essential way to assure continued fulfilling of the Torah is to always begin anew, even if the ordeals of the exile are so overpowering, physically, spiritually, and financially, that one is completely hindered from doing anything. One must nevertheless start anew again and again, preparing and offering oneself anew to God's service and aspect of I am prepared to begin existence. I am prepared to begin existence. Sometimes one must make many new beginnings in a single day, certainly every week. Sometimes one must make many new beginnings in a single day, certainly every week. Eventually, though all the previous beginnings combine and come to one's aid, for no good desires ever lost. One ultimately merits beginning and completing one's service properly. The main thing is to clear one's mind every day, at every point of all one's previous experience up until that day and that moment. all earlier beginnings of serving God until now should not be reckoned with. Rather, one should see oneself as if never before had begun serving God at all. Backslides and downfalls are due mainly to one's feeling that one has already tried to serve God but then slacked off, only to begin again and slacken again, repeating the cycle again and again until one despairs completely and ceases even trying anymore. Until one despairs completely and ceases even trying anymore. Thus the main thing is to forget at each moment all of one's previous experience, even if one has begun anew countless times in the past, but to start entirely anew, preparing and offering oneself to God's service however one is able, whether by crying out to God from the depths of the heart as needed at this moment, whether by beginning to study Torah, pray and fulfill the mitzvahs, or by cheering oneself that one was not created a Gentile. By way of all these varieties of advice for serving God, one will always remain steadfast in fulfilling the Torah. The truth is that even one who has sinned throughout one's life and repented only at the end is forgiven for everything, and certainly one who tried many times to return to God, the main cause of backslides and discouragements comes from seeing how one had already attempted and begun several times only to fall. This is all the work of the forces of evil which want to seduce the person with this and confuse him until he despairs. Thus one must follow the above path very scrupulously, very scrupulously very scrupulously, always beginning anew in some way, completely releasing from one's memory everything one has endured until this moment, completely ignoring all the previous attempts at beginning again, but really beginning completely fresh every time until one merits complete repentance, beginning and finishing completely when one merits strengthening oneself instead. One can attain very high and lofty things, and illumination is drawn from the divine name Ekye, triple together with the name Yid K Vav K Hawaii, which God revealed to Moses when he asked him if they asked me what is his name, what should I tell them? One also contains a song and the melody that will be revealed, that will be revealed, that will be revealed in the future, which is single, double, triple, and quadruple, and form, which is, and which, not form, and quadruple. Oh, that's not one. One also attains a song and the melody that will be revealed in the future, which is single, double, tripled, and quadrupled, and which is founded on the name Yid K Vav K in quadruple form, which is Yid K Vav K 15. Any Jew who wants to have compassion on his soul, leaving behind his spiritual filth, drawing close to true tzaddikim, and truly returning to God, must know that one must unavoidably endure many crises. He must know that one must unavoidably endure many crises and stormy waves of different trials and tribulations, and that if one remains firmly in one's place in face of whatever befalls him, one will certainly merit the eternal good. The power for this comes only through the power of the true tzaddik, an aspect of Moses who uses various strategies with amazing wisdom in order to revive and sustain all the souls who desire to draw near to God. This is an aspect of how the tzaddik sometimes leaves his state of being in deep contemplation of and binding to God in order to revive and strengthen all the simple people who do not study the Torah, and the scholars during the time they are not learning Torah. One must inevitably cease from learning at times where one's service must be a running and returning, entering and leaving, which is the reason for the process of progress and backslide that each person must experience. This is an aspect of the breaks between the portions of the Torah, an aspect of the breaks that the tzaddik takes every so often and ceases from his service in order to revive and strengthen those who are in a state of pausing. This is alluded to in the words of the sages. What is the purpose of the breaks between the Torah portions? To give Moses a rest. Let this be a lesson for an average person learning from an average person. The sole source for the average person to strengthen himself in times of these breaks is through the breaks in the Torah portions. by strengthening oneself to endure whatever one must. We refine the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the sources of all trials a human being must endure. And by refining knowledge, one automatically refines the three minds, attaining faith in the renewal of this world and the renewal of the world in the future. Human 16, just as God sets aside the higher beings and angels, and specifically desires the service of earthly man. The lower the level from which one arouses oneself with the slightest arousal creates awesome but lies above. As and when Jethro came, his holy name was exalted and honored. Hence, when the truth tzaddik elevates very blemished souls, a wondrous unification is brought about specifically through this. This is the secret of the snake biting the gazelle, regarding the splitting of the Red Sea. The main unification is made when the tzaddik illuminates these souls with an aspect of the ancient one, which is an aspect of what God told Moses at the Red Sea. Why are you crying out to me? The matter is dependent on the ancient one, because the Jewish people are very soul sick and blemished. The only one who can save them is the greatest tzaddik, who can illuminate them from a very high level. Who can illuminate them from a very high level? Who can illuminate them from a very high level? Who can illuminate them from a very high level? Specifically the Torah of the Ancient One, lesson 17. The Torah and the mitzvahs are vast beyond limits, as in for every purpose I saw an end. But your commandment is extremely broad. It is impossible to comprehend them. But the main source of inner strength, and power is realizing that we anyway know absolutely nothing. The main encouragement comes from believing in the holy knowledge that the true tzaddik imbues in us. Human to know that the entire world is filled with God's glory. However, as soon as questions arise in one's mind, including questions one has on oneself regarding how one is so blemished and gross and so distant from the holiness of the Torah, one must immediately flee from all these thoughts. For if one tries to answer, however, as soon as questions arise in one's mind, including questions one has on oneself regarding how one is so blemished and gross, and so distant from the holiness of the Torah, must immediately flee from all these thoughts. For if one tries to answer these questions, one only falls into even deeper questions and backslides. Therefore one must silence one's mind and fulfill the teaching. The fence of wisdom is silence, and garner all one's strength to snatch whatever good points one can in Torah and mitzvahs, especially in prayer, supplication, and conversation with one's creator, not paying heed to whatever happened in the past. One must be very stubborn in serving God, for we truly do know nothing besides fulfilling Rebbe Nachman's instructions, never to despair under any circumstances, for there is absolutely no reason to despair. We must only yearn and long and hope at all times for God's salvation, for there is no limit to His greatness. 18. Some will hear or read the words of encouragement that the truth tzaddikim and the students gave us, informing us that there is absolutely never any cause for despair. And no matter how far one has fallen, God is with one and next to one and nearby. God is with one and next to one. God is with one. God is with one and next to one and nearby. For the entire world is filled with His glory, and wherever one is, God awaits one's repentance. And some are sometimes so despondent from their inappropriate behavior, as each one knows in his heart that they feel worse than everyone else, and that these words of encouragement do not apply to them. The tzaddikim, though Nachman said explicitly that they were referring to even the very lowest person, very lowliest person. Whoever one in this situation imagines that the tzaddik Nachman is only trying to lure him back onto the path with some meaningless compromise, that one will not fall any further, while one knows the truth about oneself, one's loneliness and distance from God that has caused one to lose all hope, and other similar discouragements that the forces of evil use to seduce one and lead one astray, and to lead one astray from the path of truth. On the other hand, those who have merited being among the holy gathering that clings to the truth tzaddik truly believe that all the encouraging words of the tzaddik human are not some form of compromise used to seduce people, but are words of absolute truth in their awesomely great comprehension. That tzaddikim human perceive the truth of God's mercy and kindness as being infinite, and how He always arranges that no one ever be banished, including those who have completely strayed all their words to strengthen and comfort. He always arranges that no one ever be banished, including those who have completely strayed. All the words of strengthen and comfort, awaken to strengthen and comfort, awaken and arouse us to know that God is still with us and truly present wherever we are. For the entire world is filled with His glory. We're not ideas conjured from their own heads, they are literally the words of God, and He Himself informed us of His holy words through the tzaddikim and the holy students who remained after the passing, so that we know that God is with us in each and every generation, and that He will never abandon us until He establishes the Jerusalem. And that He will never abandon us until He establishes Jerusalem, the glory of the earth. In the future we will merit seeing this literally with our own eyes, as in the glory of God will be revealed, and all will see that the mouth of God has spoken. 19. Every person who wants to draw near to God but confronts the thick obstacles and walls on all sides, especially when one has already begun to serve God, yet sees that one must confront ever stronger obstacles at every point. And sometimes one sees that even after several years of trying to purify oneself, one still regresses and backslides, while the cravings and fantasies overwhelm one. Overwhelm one must know that all this comes from the soiled garments from which one has yet to purify oneself. They are the cause of all obstacles and overpowering forces, and the immense effort needed to shed these soiled garments, which not everyone succeeds in doing, are the struggles that befall a person, even one who has already begun to serve God and to purify oneself, even if one has already advanced somewhat to a higher level. Purifying oneself progressively at each point may later be overwhelmed by all the cravings of and untoward thoughts even more powerfully than before. This is all due to the soiled garments that one has yet to shed from oneself completely, even after one has already begun to purify oneself. We can infer this clearly from physical reality. The production of bread, man's lifeline, requires that the wheat be refined. Again and again the land must be clothed, the land must be plowed, planted, harvested. Then the wheat must be cleaned of chaff and straw, then it must be ground. Then the flour cleaned up, bran and remaining chaff. All these waste products bound up in the weeds are all rooted in the soiled garments that grasp hold of all food items ever since the act of eating was tarnished to the eating from the tree of knowledge. Hence, all these steps are to free the wheat from the grasp of the soiled garments, though even this is not the ultimate purification. This occurs at the time of eating, when an effort must be made to eat in holiness and to recite a blessing with intention. As a result, the purified good within the bread rises and gives life to the person, so that one can thank and praise God, bonding thereby with the infinite, the source of all life, while the waste materials are expelled literally as feces. Hence, all these preliminary steps of purification that refine the bread from the waste material mixed within it are meaningless compared to the final purification when it is actually eaten, which is the full purification from the soiled garments. This is precisely why one drawing close to God must endure what he does. Some begin to purify themselves, but the purification is only like the separation of wheat from the chaff and the straw. This too is very good, but one must continue separating the bran and remaining chaff and other processes until it becomes bread and human food fit for consumption. However, even one who has already attained all this has yet to attain full purification. Has yet to attain full purification, which takes place only with the act of eating itself As said, one who does that muster one's strength and endure the struggle needed during final purification. Then the obstacles, veils, and confusions can overpower him to an even greater degree. And then before, since specifically now the soiled garments are aroused, since one must separate them out specifically during eating, which is the final stage of purification. This occurs both on the individual and collective levels, for every person must pass through all of this, striving to purify oneself step after step after step until the final step of eating, which is sometimes more difficult than all the others, for then one must separate all the good and totally expel the waste matter which comes from the forces of evil and the cleapus. The same is true on a collective level. The essential difficulty nowadays that confronts one who wants to begin serving God, and the increasingly intense bitterness of the exile now as we hear the footsteps of the Mashiach, is because we are at the final stage of complete purification, which will lead to the full redemption, after which will be no more exile. This purification is like the purification of eating. The soiled garments are mainly aroused. We thus need now much bitterness and effort before we merit any holiness, purifying and cleansing ourselves from cravings and fantasies. From cravings and fantasies, which are literally aspects of feces. All the while one must strengthen oneself with all types of encouragement, not to be discouraged by this at all, rather making an effort to drive these forces out, using the methods and advice that the truth revealed to us. God has already provided us with the healing before the wound through the holy books and advice that have been revealed in these generations, through which we can strengthen and enliven ourselves even now to remain firm in our position, constantly drawing ever nearer to God until we merit purifying ourselves entirely of the soiled garments. Purification from this is only through the Torah, as the sages commenting on the verse, stretching out like brooks. Just as brooks cleanse a person from impurity, like what do the words of the Torah. 20 men and people stumble and fall just as they are about to reach their final perfection. Just as they are about to reach their final perfection, some are already at the gates of holiness and could have easily entered completely into the realm of holiness, but retreated completely into the realm, but retreated because obstacles and confusions aroused against them, which with such intensity that they felt it was impossible to withstand them. The main means of rectifying this situation is Torah study. One must be very strong, never to neglect Torah study, no matter what one must endure. One will then be able to overcome anything through the Torah, for all rectifications and purifications from the first to the last are all only through the Torah, are all only through the Torah, are all only from the through the Torah, are all only through the Torah from the first. For all rectifications and purifications from the first to the last are only through the Torah. I cushion me the night and left the video you can argue next me about myself when I come out of fountain the second one let's say the son yo I cushion me as I left the video you can argue cooking it as you have myself when I come out my fountain she became forgot about myself when I found like my music I was like you move you stop sounds like I gave it was nice and sometimes yo she ate the sun